This is us trying to finish up what someone else started. Actually called me up and said, hey, can you explain some things on how to do it? And I did. And it's discouraging at first if you don't have experience or haven't watched one of these videos maybe. But he got started and we're going to finish it up. The first thing I see whenever I got here is although this is a wet area where you got a toilet that could leak, a sink that could leak, a bathtub that could overflow or leak, it looks like the air conditioner, central heating air, has been leaking down. They've already replaced the floor once and it's been running down through here, and this had linoleum. And then they took the linoleum up, and then it got underneath the linoleum, which is quite likely. But what happens is, you come over here with this a-coil. If you don't change the filters, and sometimes they're in the door, this works just fine. If you don't change the filters, like this one's totally clogged up, this thing will ice up and it will overflow. There's a plastic pan right here. It doesn't have very much room. Let's see if I can get this light.
Yeah, that's better.
That light in there, see, there's not much of a pan, and you need to clean these coils once a year at least. So there's a drain that comes out of this pan right here. You need to clean that out once a year at least. And so clean your coil, clean those things, and change your filter every month. But this wasn't done, so it overflowed, went down, hit the floor, and soaked back and went back into here. I can promise you that's what happened. So what I recommend to avoid this and for your air conditioner to run good is to clean the coil. That way it pulls air through it regularly and like it's supposed to, and change your filters. Again, the same as if you took your car and put your mud over top of the radiator, or put your hand over your mouth running up a hill. You're asking a lot of that air conditioner, and it will freeze up if it's restricted that way, or if it's low on freon, it'll freeze up and go past the pan, which only has like a ½ inch of room in this case, and then it'll just run water down, and then you'll have water damage on top of a non-running properly air conditioner. So we're going to fix what they asked me to fix in this case. This customer, the renter, is a very good renter in that the renter actually tries to fix things. But lack of experience kind of discourages. So the first thing we're going to do is take off this door so it's not in the way for doing what we need to do there. And then we can get real close to the edges. And what I normally do is just take the hinges loose. This way I can put them right back. You can almost always see where they did go. And I usually do the bottom first. Put my foot underneath it. Elbows kind of holding it to the wall. Then I put the screws over here. By the way, a lot of times people say, well, my door doesn't work. What do I do? It's got a problem. See how this, if you notice right here, this hinge is bent? Because it's bent, this door will be having a tendency to be tight over here. What you can do, you see that hammer right there by you.
Alright.
Just flip that hinge over to the door. Little cheapy hinges. Flatten that hinge out, and guess what? It'll work for a while longer. This one's bent also. Not very much, not yet where it's a problem. But I already know, in order to make my work look right, you know, fix the door, and like, hey, something feels better about this place. So we put that. What they're going to do next is I'll make a starting point with like a hammer. Get real close. We'll be in prime this batten strip up because it's nothing there but to seal the bottom of the drywall. It really is not much in the way of trim. And they put this linoleum down before they put the walls down, so the walls, they don't have to cut it. They just roll it over at the factory and then put the walls on top. So the trim is not covering the edges of the linoleum or tile, which they don't have tile. So we are going to replace that with a regular house type. That's usually my goal, is to make a mobile home a lot more like a house, a conventional home, than to try to say, oh, well, it's a mobile home, you can't do it. So here we go, and I'm going to there's a vent here in this case, but there's always obstacles. If you notice over here, screen that camera, there's water lines, and quite often there's electric lines. So you don't run a deep cut with a sawzall and then hit a water line, because I've done that. It ain't no fun. So what I end up doing is run a shallow, long cut with a sawzall, and in this case you're going to have to be careful not to get into the ductwork, which you can patch, but it's better not to just do the damage. We're not going to use this 3/8 or 1/2 inch plywood that I guess they put in here to walk on. And we're going to probably replace that over there by the doorway, because that doesn't look right either. So we're going to cut all this out with a sawzall. I have an oscillating saw, which we've found more and more ways to use. Didn't buy anything expensive, like we got it from Harbor Freight. It's like $20 for a cheapy one. The blades, for a package of them, is like $9. Package of 3, which you get 1 cut blade and then 2 scrapers. So for very little money, you can be doing this yourself, and I'll try to take you very slowly through all this. I'm looking at we want to get this out of the way. Whenever you start taking the toilet out, you want to take this loose. If you're in a house that hasn't had the tremendous amount of damage like this one, you're going to want to put a towel down, because the remainder of the tank in here, after you shut it off and flushed it, will still run water down on the floor, and then you create more damage, which can take a little while to show up. But anyway, put a towel down and take this loose. In this case, we know we're not going to be able to get these nuts through all that rust. As a rule, you won't. You can use a hacksaw. In this case, I'm using a Ryobi battery-powered sawzall, and we're going to cut these off. Then we're going to lift this toilet up. We're going to take this lid, probably sit it in another room, and then put the toilet in here. Quite often, we put a rag and set the toilet in that. But the reason I do that is because if you try to move it into another room, the trap inside this toilet will run water onto the floor because you're moving around. And what we do is put it in here on the rag, rock it back and forth, and all the water, most of the water, it never gets all the water, will go into the bathtub, and then we can just lift it and put it back in here when we get the floor in. So these are things you need to be conscious of. You want to protect your top so you don't lose it, drop it, break it, and then you gotta, you're just not gonna find one like it. They buy things in lots, and when the manufacturer runs out of those, they move on to another. They doesn't make a deal with another manufacturer. And so those manufacturers may not even be in business, and they certainly may not have made that toilet anymore. So as far as the rusty bolts, not always is it because of a leak. A lot of times it's because the water inside here, which comes from outside through the ground, it's cool, and so like when you're sick and you're feeling really good to put your head up against a cold toilet, that toilet's cold temperature with a warmer temperature inside causes condensation and ends up collecting down here and making these rust. And having a decorative cover on there doesn't change that. The moisture's still going to be there. So that's not unusual, even in a high dollar house. Even with a bidet, you're going to have some condensation because of the change in color. They don't make insulated toilets that I'm aware of. So I put my hand on there and I can feel just a little bit of moisture. Is it going to cause the floor to go? No, it's not that much moisture. But it hits this metal and collects around it, and this is what happens. So you're going to want to cut this off, and you can use a hacksaw. So we're using a metal cutting blade in this case. And that'll be bolts off with a sawzall. Usually it doesn't do any kind of damage to the porcelain. And took the lid off, put it out of here, and we're gonna lift this thing up and expect to spit a bit of water. In this case it wasn't very much. Next, when you get that toilet up, you're gonna want to put something in there, toilet paper, otherwise you're going to get all the fumes, which is why the traps are there on sinks, and there's a trap in there on the toilet so the smell doesn't come up, anything else that wants to come up. So there's always water in there to stop that smell, so we got to stop that smell by putting something in the hole. This particular vent is smaller than normal. Normally they're like a 4x10. This one is 4x8. But they're all held on with aluminum, really flimsy aluminum, and staples generally. A lot of times people will say, man, I'm losing a lot of air conditioning underneath the house because I can feel it when I open up my skirting. Some of the time, some of the issue is this area here on the underneath where it connects to the ductwork is got foil tape and it's open on the corners. You can do that yourself. You pull your vents off and then seal it all up. Make sure everything's fastened. Sometimes the ductwork's literally pulled and these are not holding anything. We'll pull all these staples out and we'll end up using screws into the plywood. It sometimes can be a little more difficult to get the vent in, but not always. But I don't staple anything. I'm not sometimes theorized that mobile home factories, the people who work there do not staple. I had a piece of trim on a double wide that was in the middle, what they call a marriage wall. It had over 100 staples in it, and it still was falling off. So I don't understand. We see it all the time. There'll be 4, 5, 6 staples in one little tiny area, and then other areas might go 15 inches. But they kind of encourage it, obviously, somehow, by putting staples in lots. So what I've done here is cut the sawzall at a hard angle, like so, and that way I don't hit an electric line because I'm not going so far under that I'd cut anything that's underneath the wall, but down like so. And then I've also done it so that I don't cut into this ductwork that you can see right here. And this looks like a strap that they left over, part of the strap, they just left it under there. Happens to be, this one's a little more difficult because the wall ends up, the floor joist ends up being right there next to the wall. But that's kind of an advantage in that we can put a 2x right to that and then we'll set a floor on that. And it's just all brute work. If you watch any of my other videos, you'll see how I deal with a lot of different situations when it comes to flooring. Sometimes you can cut through the middle. In this case you wouldn't want to because there's ductwork right there. And then step on one side and the other and pull it loose. Other times you just gotta smash it out and get it all out. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go through here and I'll show you as we go along what we're doing. Screw. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can, like I did on this one, go at an angle through here and then go through here. Your goal is to get underneath to help support the tub also in this case. And even with the floor joists. Now case like this where it's kind of dropping down back there, a lot of times what I can do, put a screw in like so. Get this started over on this side, and then I'll try to pull it up. And then pull this screw back out. Put it over here. So in this case, it's kind of an odd, I'm not seeing it. There's no reason for this ductwork to go over here. This is outside of the wall. There's no ductwork running to the, sometimes they have flexible ductwork running to the kitchen cabinets. That's not the case here. For whatever reason, they decided to run a whole trunk, and then it's folded up underneath here. So in this case, you're not going to see this very often, because I haven't seen it in 30 years, but we're going to put a 2x4 right here, and we're going to make it where, even though this is smashing into ductwork, we're going to put that there. Looks like we're going to have to go and get some 5/4 material, which is a little bigger than 3/4 of, it's 1 1/4 instead of 1 1/2. A lot of people use it for decking. And we'll put it right there so we can get the most amount of wood alongside here, because the 2x won't fit, because this is a really weird situation. You don't normally see ductwork run parallel. Usually it's down under and it runs. That way it's protected by the plastic barrier, which is why you don't have to have a plastic barrier on the ground underneath mobile home, even though Southern Building Code on regular houses have it. If you put it there, water gets underneath that house, it stays there. If you want to make a pond, dig a hole, put plastic on the ground, and it will hold water for a long time. Okay? So if you want to hold water under your house, put plastic on the ground. The mobile home here in this case has a vapor barrier, which is right here holding the insulation. It protects the plumbing. Whereas a house has block walls, you know, around the outside, dug into the ground where water doesn't pass through like it does on skirting on a mobile home. And a mobile home has this vapor barrier here, whereas a house puts a vapor barrier on the ground and the insulation is exposed. You don't want that in your mobile home, because you don't have the block walls to protect you from the wind. We get into that discussion several times, and I get lots of questions, and a lot of people talk about square footage of venting. They're trying to apply what works with a house to a mobile home. It doesn't work, I promise you. You can put all the vents in the world you want, and I'll crawl underneath that house and there'll be water. Especially if you put plastic on the ground. So in this case, we don't have that situation. We're working with a vapor barrier that's still here. The insulation's still here. There's actually a frame right here. It's usually about 3 foot from the outside wall, and then outriggers to support the ridge beam out there. So this is not necessary. We're going to put a 2x here, and we're going to put 5/4 there. Then we're going to pre-drill holes into this board here so that we can put a 2x all the way across here and give us a little more support right here. And you're not going to be able to see anything with my big body in the way, but we're going to fasten a 2x6 here and a 2x6 over there underneath this cabinet, kind of support it. And then we'll put a little 2x in there, and I'll show you how I cut that 2x to do that. But you won't be able to see anything if you watch me video wise. So we'll bring you back when we get to the next level. What we've done is measured this, gave a little bit of room, and then added 2 inches on each side, which would be a total of 4. Then we notched out 1.5 inches depth, and that way we can put it in. Because it's going to be difficult to hold in place. I mean, I could reach underneath with my arms, which I drill to put it in. Looks like we'll have to cut it down some. That just split it. Even though it's split, we just moved it over a little bit, put the screw in a different place, and it's doing great. And we screwed it over there, both places. It's a little bit wide gap because we had it like a 1/4 inch or less too long, and he's made sure that it's not going to be a problem. So anyway, now we'll have support for the foot area. I don't think anybody ever that fat is going to put that much weight right on their toes, but hey, we're ready for it if they are. So now we've got to get 5/4. I'll have to go to the mobile home park that I have and see if I can find some 5/4 material, or in the other place. If we had a hardware store close by, I'd buy that, but we're close to my mobile home park, so we'll run over there and do that. Real narrow area inside the ductwork that goes to nowhere, and we're putting a 5/4 board, which we ripped down because the depth of the flange on the side there that pinches it together is not going to make it available for us. We're hoping to get this squeezed in there, but staples and things like that may discourage us. Trying to get flush with the 2x6, not the 4. I'm going to pre-drill. I think it's like an 1/8 inch drill bit.
Yeah, it does.
I don't know what that is.
That's
That tapping?
yeah. Your ass. We got a creature from the deep underneath us.
We are. Alright, now we can lay plywood, screw something to, and we've got the board over here. What we're going to do next is I want to run my plywood across the 2x, so that way you don't lose strength. The board is laminated in lengths this way. The tree would have been this way, and we want that to go across the 2x. If you run it with it, then it might bow in between, and I don't want that. So the bug went in my dress. So 53 1/4 is what I measured from that wall to that wall. And then we're going to go out there and roughly measure it. And then we're going to measure all our cuts, which is a lot. We've got, if you notice over here, a 2x on each side of this. That'll allow us to cut any angle we want to get that plywood in there. So what we'll probably do is go at an angle from this point, the center of this floor joist, and angle through this water line and that flange and see if we can get that piece in. Quite often you end up having to cut that piece in 2 pieces also. But you will be there when we go outside. We're going to measure. And I got 53 1/4. Then I end up with a cut at, where's that sound again?
It's in the vent.
34 7/8.
It's coming from that.